Hello friends, welcome to my channel Pediatrics and Life Tips. This video is the second part of the celiac disease in children. In this video, I will discuss the diagnosis, guideline summary and the laboratory findings of celiac disease. Now I will give the summary of the guidelines which are published by European Society for Pediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology and Nutrition in October 2019. According to this, there is no need for HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8 typing in the patient with positive transglutaminase immunoglobulin A if they qualify for the celiac disease with biopsy, or if serum transglutaminase immunoglobulin A is equal to or higher than 10 times the upper limit of normal, and endomysial antibody is also positive. Now, while the patient testing negative for HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8 have a very low celiac disease risk, but the diagnosis is not confirmed with a positive result. According to these guidelines, if serum immunoglobulin A values are normal for age, transglutaminase IgA antibody should serve regardless of patient age as the initial serological test. Children with suspected celiac disease should undergo total immunoglobulin A and transglutaminase IgA antibody testing as an initial screen. If total IgA is normal, then TGA IgA antibody serum concentration should be at least 10 times the upper limit of normal for a diagnosis of celiac disease made without biopsy. Now, if the parents have agreed to a no biopsy approach to celiac disease diagnosis, then a positive endomysial antibody IgA test should be performed on a second blood sample in order to confirm the diagnosis in children who have transglutaminase IgA antibody more than or equal to 10 times the upper limit of normal. Now, the patient which have positive transglutaminase A IgA antibodies, but the level is less than 10 times the upper limit of normal, they should undergo upper endoscopy with multiple biopsies in order to confirm the diagnosis. If total immunoglobulin A concentration is low, then the second step should consist of an IgG-based test, that is the deamidated gliadin peptide, endomysial antibodies or transglutaminase A antibodies. In patients in whom IgA is deficient but IgG-based serological tests are positive, biopsies should not be omitted, that is, biopsy should be done in order to confirm the diagnosis. According to these guidelines, while the patient is on a gluten-containing diet, histological evaluation should be carried out using at least 4 biopsies from the distal duodenum and at least 1 from the duodenum bulb. The presence of mucosal lesion is indicated by a Willis to Crypt ratio of less than 2. Now, if the transglutaminase A antibody levels are discordant with the histopathology, then the biopsy should be recut or a second opinion should be obtained from an experienced pathologist. Now, it is also important to discuss the histopathology of celiac disease. 3 distinctive and progressive histological stages have been defined as Marsh classification. Type 0 is the pro-infiltrative stage and it is normal. Type 1 is the infiltrative lesion. There is increased intraepithelial lymphocytosis. Type 2 is the hyperplastic lesion. It consists of type 1 pathology plus hyperplastic crypts. Type 3 is the destructive lesion. It consists of type 2 pathology plus villus atrophy. It is further divided into 3 types. In 3A, there is partial villus atrophy. In 3B, there is subtotal, and in 3C, there is total villus atrophy. These are the histological findings according to the Marsh classification. Other laboratory findings in celiac disease are as following. There may be hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and metabolic acidosis. Evidence of malnutrition may be present in the form of hypoalbuminemia, hypoproteinemia, hypocholesterolemia, and low serum creatinine level. Other hematological tests reveal anemia. In this, iron deficiency is common, but folic acid and vitamin B12 deficiency may also occur. Serum iron level is low. Prothrombin time might be prolonged, and international normalized ratio INR may be increased because of the malabsorption of vitamin K. Stool examination is also important. Stools are typically bulky, greasy, and the rancid odor of the stool suggests malabsorption of fat. Sudan stain of the stool reveal fat droplets, while 72-hour fecal collection for a more quantitative measurement of fat malabsorption is also helpful in celiac disease. In celiac disease, tolerance tests are done to detect malabsorption. First is the breath hydrogen test. In this, excretion of the breath hydrogen, a product of bacterial fermentation of unabsorbed lactose, is often elevated in celiac disease. Second is the oral D-xylose tolerance test. It can reveal carbohydrate malabsorption. D-xylose is absorbed preferentially in the proximal small intestine and is excreted unmetabolized in the urine. In untreated celiac disease, urinary D-xylose excretion and the peak blood xylose levels are depressed. Now, children with inadequate sun exposure and insufficient dietary intake of calcium and vitamin D should undergo serum calcium and phosphate level measurement and vitamin D studies. Now, bone mineral density assessment. Routine bone mineral density assessment is unnecessary in young pediatric patients. At diagnosis, management with adherence to a gluten-free diet as well as monitoring of growth and vitamin D levels are sufficient. Consider bone mineral density assessment in children who present with growth failure, severe malabsorption, prolonged diagnostic delay, or clinical evidence of bone disease. And repeat this testing every 1 to 2 years until the findings are normal, particularly in teenage patients. Imaging studies are not indicated in celiac disease. However, radiography of the GI tract with a barium swallow study and a small intestine follow-through may show non-specific changes because of the mucosal inflammation and possible concomitant protein-losing enteropathy, such as edema of the bowel wall or dispersion of the barium column. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel.